All right, y'all. We are back for another episode of Chronicles of a Virgo podcast. And as usual, I'm your favorite Virgo host, Shakita Johnson. And we have a lovely guest joining us today. And this guest is going to give us some good gems. So make sure you guys got your pen and paper ready because she is about to come with it. Okay, y'all. So today joining us, we have my girl Laine. What's up,
Hello.
girl? How you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Or should I say Miss EFT Lane as social media knows your handle, knows you by that. But thank you for joining me for this lovely conversation today because we are going to get into some things. And I feel like this conversation will definitely be insightful and helpful for many of us.
I am
All right.
pumped. I'm very excited.
Yes. And I know it's outside of probably both of our time zones because you're not in the US with us. Well, me at
No.
least.
I am in Melbourne, Australia, so it's about 12:30 in the afternoon here. But lovely day outside. I mean, if you know Melbourne, you know that we have about four seasons in one day. So it's already been raining, but the sun is out again. So
I can see it's nice and bright in here. I'm on the East Coast. I'm in Maryland and it's been super cold these last couple of days. We got a lot of snow these last couple of days, so the weather is just like not in our favor. But I'll take it right now. All right. So yes, before we get into our conversation, as usual, we got to do our lovely mental health check in with ourselves, make sure how we doing. So for anyone that's joining me for the first time, and Lane, the mental health check, we rate our mental health on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 being you feel like you know your mental health is in a good space, you're doing good, and 1, you're not doing the best. There's room for pouring, but you are managing. So, how would you rate your mental health today on a scale of 1 to 5?
ooh, I'm gonna go with a four. I think we were chatting a little bit offline. I'm feeling really good, but I'm just kind of getting over a cold at the moment. So apologies if I'm sounding a little bit nasally, but I'm all good.
Yeah. So, again, thank you even for joining us, even with you not feeling the best. We definitely appreciate it. I definitely appreciate it because I know how it is. Flu, cold, RSV season, but I'm glad that you are, managing well and taking care of yourself because that's what's important.
Exactly.
So my mental health today on a scale of 1 to 5, I'm going to say I am a 4.5. I'm no, you know
Ooh.
what? I'm a 5. I'm gonna say I'm a 5. I'm a 5. Yes, girl, it's been a long time coming. I have been off of work for the month of January. So those that have been listening know that I took a month off from work to work on my own mental health and my wellness. And I'm feeling very light, feeling good, and I am about to go back to work next week. So but probably by the time this episode comes out, I'll be back at work. So we'll see how things continue to go. But nonetheless, I do these checks as a way to hold myself accountable to check in with my mental health, as well as to promote others to check in with their mental health, de stress, see how you're feeling before it gets too late. And some of us reach burnout, unfortunately.
It's an
Okay.
amazing thing to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I really do it in my real life. Like, especially since I've been off this month, I've really been making sure the majority of my care has been catered to mental health and then my wellness. So it definitely does make a difference. And you are going to tell us some other things we can do as well to keep that together. So let's get into this conversation. So today we're going to be talking about body positivity and one of my favorite techniques that I talk about a lot, EFT tapping, which is emotional, it's called the emotional freedom technique, and it is tapping. And I've talked about it before on the show. I've tried to explain it and stuff. So I am going to ask you, since you are certified in the area and stuff, can you just give a little bit more background on specifically what EFT tapping is and how you personally came in contact with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said, EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Techniques, or it's also known as tapping. And essentially, it's an alternative treatment for physical pain or and emotional distress. So, I kind of like to give this analogy because I feel like it helps people kind of understand how EFT works and what it can do for people. So, a lot of us have been on road trips before and we've come across like a really breathtaking view, and we get out of the car and we just really soak in that beauty that is around us, and we're in this like sense of peace and awe. And that's a little bit what happens to us when we start to practice EFT. So if you could imagine that your body is like the landscape of this road trip that you're on, and there are all these highways running through it. These are what we refer to in EFT as our meridians or our energy systems, which you will probably hear a lot about through like Reiki or yoga. And when we're feeling stressed out or anxious, it's kind of like there's a traffic jam on those highways. And what EFT does essentially is it helps clear that traffic. So by gently tapping on, and I'm sorry, I know it's a podcast, so people might not be able to see me, but I'm just tapping on certain parts of my body and my face. What I'm doing is I'm actually sending signals to the amygdala. So the amygdala is the part of the brain that controls the stress response. Think of it like the traffic control center if we're talking about roads and highways. And what you're doing is you're basically telling your body, hey, I'm okay, I'm safe, we can let that traffic flow again. And this action really soothes that intense fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response that we can often have when we're a bit stressed. Now, let's talk about why we speak during EFT. So if you can imagine that you're on a road trip with a friend, you're not going to be driving in silence, right? Like you'll be sharing stories, you'll be singing along, maybe you're, listening to a little bit of, I don't know, Beyonce, a bit of Lizzo, that's my jam. And that's what speaking during EFT is like. It really allows us to express our feelings and our emotions, and really helps us in changing the way that we react to the problems that we're facing. So EFT, ultimately, its aim is to restore the balance in your body. So the next time that you're dwelling on a past event, or you're anxious about something in the future, or maybe there's something happening right now, that intensity has hopefully decreased.
Yes, thank you so much for explaining that. And it is a very powerful technique. I started working with EFT about almost 2 years ago. My therapist, we actually introduced me to it, and we actually began working on it. And I know how to do it on my own. And she had recommended me look up a few people, and one specific was Brad Yates.
Yes.
Um, and he's come to like the DMV area, and I haven't been able to see him yet, but I've in the midst of like having like anxiety attacks and being very anxious, I've been able to like resort. And I even find myself sometimes, if I feel myself being anxious or just things happening, I will start tapping on like certain areas. And if I don't say certain things out loud, I'm saying them in my head, and then I can feel a shift and feel myself calming down. So
Mm-hmm.
it definitely does work.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brad Yates was actually very much a part of my journey as to why I started doing EFT. And I can recall during pretty much the height of COVID, really, it was a very isolating time for myself. My mental health was really, really suffering at that point in time. And so I decided to have a look at some online communities that I could join and be a part of, just so I could feel a little less isolated at the end of the day, right? And so one of these communities that I came across was Gala Darling, and she is known as the Tapping Queen on Instagram. And I joined her program called The Vortex a few years ago. And the very first community call that we had with The Vortex was with Brad Yates. And it was a 2-hour tapping event. And I'd never done tapping before. I didn't know what it was. As I said, it went for 2 hours, which is a very, very long and exhausting time if it's your first time being introduced to EFT. So I had to go and have a nap afterwards because I was that drained. And then I woke up. I mean, during the process of tapping with Brad, I was like, oh my God, what are we doing? This is so weird. Okay, I'm just going to keep going along with it. And like I said, exhausted, had to go have a nap. I woke up and I was just like, wow, that is next level for me, for someone who was like, what are we doing? To then waking up and being like, okay, this is something that I think would really help a lot of people, and it would really help in my life as well at that point in time. And yeah, the very next day, I decided to look into what courses were available for me a little bit closer to home in Australia. And I came across the, excuse me, and
Mhm.
I came across the Australian Tapping Institute, which is run by a woman by the name of Lorna Hollinger. And that's how I decided that EFT was going to be the next step in my career path, in my journey, because I'd been in corporate for 8 years and I just knew that it wasn't serving me anymore. So EFT was the next step for me. And Brad Yates was part of that journey.
That's amazing, and I cannot imagine 2 hours of doing that, like, that's impeccable.
It was
I
very
can
intense.
like, I can barely get through on a good day, maybe an hour or so of a meditation,
Mm.
so to do 2 hours of tapping is crazy, but more power to y'all, power to y'all. So, to circle back a little bit, was there anything I know you said that COVID was a rough time for you.
Mhm.
So, were you dealing with, like, depression or anxiety, or did you have, like, a history of any type of, like, mental health struggles?
Uh, I think that I've always had some kind of relationship with mental health that has been a struggle. I grew up in quite a traumatic household. I also had divorced parents on top of that, which can be, trauma in amongst itself. But I've never been diagnosed. And I think that I don't necessarily think that you have to be diagnosed to understand that your mental health is suffering and that you want to be able to change or do something about it. I was also in a household where I did have very supportive parents. And I remember when I was really struggling with my mental health in my teen years, I really wanted to go on antidepressants and it just seemed like a way out for me. But my stepmom at the time was like, hey, let's try and implement some other things before you start taking medication. And I really thank her for that. And I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that medication is not an option for people. It certainly is. I think just in that point in my life, it was probably more of an open opportunity for me to explore other holistic and alternative pathways before resulting or resorting to um, medication. So I've always been in therapy from a very young age, and that's something that's pretty much followed me up until maybe 3 or 4 years ago when I stopped going to therapy. And that was around the same time that I really decided to start focusing on my own health and well-being. And it's been a great blessing. And again, I don't think that therapy is not for everyone. I think that everyone can go out and try and see what works for them. And if it doesn't, try something else and just keep going until you find that one thing that really, really works for you.
Yes, yes. I'm glad you said that because I preach that, like I am a therapy advocate,
Mm-hmm.
because it definitely has been impactful for me. And I've been in situations where I've had numerous therapists and it just was not a good fit. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, it was a cycle of trying to find the right one. But
Yeah.
also through therapy, I have learned things like EFT and
Mm-hmm.
Reiki and enhancing my meditations and doing different other um techniques and things that have helped me along my whole journey. Now, we're human. We go through different cycles of like maybe depression, anxiety and things, but implementing other techniques and stuff can help us on a daily basis. Like I'd be in my little office at work sometimes just tapping away.
Mm, mm, absolutely. And exactly like you said, there are going to be it's going to be a journey and a process to find not just a modality that works for you, but someone that can help you with that modality that is a good fit as well. Like, as you said, therapy has worked for you. It's worked for me in the past, but the added layer to that is finding somebody that you can feel safe with, right? It's
Right.
not just about, oh, going to therapy and I'm going to go with the first person that I find.
Exactly, exactly. And now I know, like listening to your podcast and seeing your social media, I know that you are a body positivity advocate. How did you come into like wanting to advocate for body positivity? Was that something that you struggled with in the past, or you just seeing a place that it needed to be some more positivity around the area?
Well, for me, it's more so about body acceptance than what it is about body positivity, right? I think that we get very caught up in this world these days, especially with media and especially with social media, is that the messaging that we keep getting told on repeat is that you have to love your body, you have to love your body. If you don't love your body, then no one else will love your body. And I just think that that messaging is can be quite harmful, can be quite toxic. And I think that we need to take a step back and go, right on, let's have a look at the acceptance space and being neutral about my body, right? I can look at myself in the mirror and I can go, man, I really do not like my stomach at all today. There's a huge difference between saying that and looking at myself in the mirror and going like, I love my stomach, I love my stretch marks. Your brain does not believe you when you say that because it knows that you're lying to yourself. But when you come and shift back to body acceptance and body neutrality and you look at yourself in the mirror and you go, man, I don't like my stomach today, but I know that it keeps me nice and warm and it gets to eat nourishing food that I get to eat with people that I love. Your body can't deny that because it is true. You do have a human stomach. You do have a body that is trying to get nutrition through those systems, right? So there's, I think, it's a fine line, but a huge difference between body acceptance and body positivity. And that's just the kind of lens that I'm trying to get women to see, that they don't have to sit there and say these things about themselves that, yeah, whilst they are very positive and can be lovely, that it's not going to work for you if you just keep, if it's a lie, right? You have to get to the acceptance phase before you can get into that positive space, right?
I love the fact that you brought that full circle, and that makes a lot of sense. Like being able to accept something and embrace it, and like I deal with body, I guess, acceptance sometimes, but I
Mm.
think a lot of mine is trauma based, just my
Yeah.
upbringing. And, a lot of times I think growing up, people don't know the impact that words really have or can have on a person later in life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, being from the background that I come from, it was like you had to have a certain type of body image. It's still even now, it's
Yeah.
tough. So, like,
Mm.
how does one work towards accepting their body to get to the point where like, oh, I accept my body, but I love myself at the same time?
I think that that's a lifelong journey. And we got to remember that we don't ever come to a destination point with our bodies because they're forever changing, right? If you
Mhm.
want to base your identity and your self-worth about the way that you look, that's not going to serve you when you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s and your body image has completely shifted and completely changed. The internal work is so important so that you can get to 50, 60, 70 and be like, wow, my identity, it doesn't really matter because it's not attached to the way I look. It's about how I feel about myself on the inside. Because the way that you look doesn't determine whether or not you're a good person or a nice person or if you do do good for the world, right? And so again, it's about healing that internal journey. And I think, as you were saying before, like a lot of your experience has stemmed from the traumas that you experienced growing up. And I think a lot of the time when women fail in the dieting world or they are perceived as unattractive by social standards, we have to remember again that there are so many systems that are in place to keep women feeling crappy about their bodies. And that is, from ableism to racism to so much has stemmed from that. And a lot of the time women, we tend to blame ourselves when things don't work out right. We go, oh, I didn't try hard enough, or I suck at doing this, or I'm so lazy, or whatever. But we have to remember that there are billion-dollar industries that are contributing to the way that we feel about ourselves and make us feel like that. So we go out and buy the product. So we go out and do the diet again. So we go out and get another gym membership that we won't ever go to. So it's a perpetual cycle. And that's why I say, like, it's good and important to realize that there are external outer systems that are contributing to the way I feel. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the internal work that I need to do that'll impact the external world that I'm living in.
Most definitely. And especially with the diet culture and like, we were talking about the whole stigma around social media. The big thing that I have been seeing for the last few months is the whole Ozempic and,
Yeah,
like the phentermine trend and having to do the research on a lot of these things, even though they may be seen as beneficial and they can help, the longevity of using a lot of these different products can be very detrimental to our own bodies, you know?
absolutely.
And it's like, oh, mentally, it's like, well, if I love myself, I wouldn't continue to fill it with things that hurt me, you know? But
Hmm.
on the flip side, is it really worth this short term goal of looking a certain way just for, someone else's perception? So I think it's a lot, like you said, that goes into the whole overall aspect of just getting to the place of accepting yourself.
Yeah, and the diet industry is a $60 billion industry, right? And if diets actually did work, they wouldn't be worth that much because people wouldn't have to keep dieting and keep getting on the hamster wheel. Diets fail 95% of the time. And this is information that we now know, yet we still choose to restrict our eating habits and we still choose to overexert ourselves in rigorous exercise and things like that. But yet the statistics show that 95% of the time, within 5 years, you're either going to put that weight back on or you're actually going to put that weight back on and then some. So if you can think about it, like if you knew that your car wasn't going to work 5 days out of the 7 days of the week, why would you still choose to drive it? It just does not make sense. But again, these systems that are in place continuously tell women that it's their fault that they didn't try hard enough. And so we repeat that cycle and we repeat that cycle and we repeat that cycle until we're dead in the ground, and it's awful.
Yeah, and I will admit I am guilty of going hard in the gym.
Mm,
It is a mental thing and it is something really to like unravel,
mm.
going hard in the gym and even the whole dieting thing. Like I will admit like that is not my lifestyle, but I have done it. And a
Yeah.
part of me being off of work was learning to create a more healthy relationship with food.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm.
And
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 I
it's
think
all
that all women have gotten on that train, that diet train, that exercise train for sure. I myself have, you know.
Mhm.
It's taken me over 30 years to really kind of liberate myself and be like, "Oh my God, I don't have to contribute to diet culture." Like, "Oh, I never actually even thought of that before." That's crazy to me.
Yeah, and like you said, it's really an inside job. So like how do you bring all of that a full circle with doing EFT and working with people with body acceptance issues?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So, as I kind of touched on earlier with my little road trip analogy, so, EFT is restoring balance to your body's energy system. So, again, the next time that you're thinking about past events or you're worried about something that's coming up in the future, if I can, I liken that to, maybe you've got a social event coming up and you're just really not comfortable in any of your clothes or whatever the case might be. Again, using EFT, hopefully that intensity has decreased, hopefully to a point where you're going to have a more neutral thought or a less reactive response. So if you could imagine, like you're someone who can't help but think, oh, gross, I look so ugly every single time you walk past a mirror or catch your reflection. After one EFT session, or maybe after a few, you still might feel that twinge of discomfort when you see yourself. But the beautiful part is that now you might actually pause and look at yourself and go, right, even though I don't feel like a hot bitch right now, I'm still totally worthy of love and acceptance. Or perhaps you're someone who really gets caught up in the Instagram comparison trap, as we were talking about earlier with social media, endlessly scrolling through photos of like influencers and really, really feeling less and less confident about yourself. Maybe after a session or two of EFT, you start to notice that you're comparing yourself when you're scrolling. And rather than scrolling right by that account, you actually take the time to stop and unfollow them. And that's a really powerful move, and that's the power of EFT. It doesn't mean that you're never going to have a bad body image day ever again, but it does mean that you'll understand that it's okay to have days like that, right?
Mhm. Oh, I like that. Just getting to a place of acceptance.
Exactly. Exactly.
I love that. So with teaching it, and having like your, your client base, is EFT, and I'm asking this as if I don't know, is EFT something that a person can do on their own, or do they have to do it with a trained practitioner?
Right on. I again love that question. So EFT is really versatile, and you can use it at any time, any place, and it's not going to cost you anything. So that makes it very accessible, right? However, when you're tapping by yourself, there are a few things that you might want to keep in mind. So firstly, our brains have that natural tendency to want to protect us from any kind of emotional discomfort, which could actually prevent us from going deeper into the issues that we're trying to resolve. Now, we might unknowingly ignore or downplay some of the subconscious messaging that is trying to surface, right? So that's one of the conditions of doing it by yourself. And secondly, without proper guidance, we might also do the complete opposite and dive a little bit too quickly and too deep, and we might get quite emotionally charged, and this can lead to emotional distress, and especially if we don't have the necessary support to help kind of navigate those feelings. And so this is where the role of myself or an EFT practitioner becomes quite valuable, because as practitioners, we're not only providing a safe and confidential space to explore those kind of emotions and things that are coming up for you, we're also trained to ask the right questions that really encourage you to explore your own emotions a little bit more deeply, but obviously at a pace that is comfortable for yourself as well. So I mean, whilst you can certainly practice EFT at home alongside other body acceptance practices that you might have, I think that having the support of a certified practitioner can really make the whole process a bit more effective and ensure that you're doing it in a safe and supportive environment.
Thank you for explaining that. And it makes a lot of sense when you say like you can actually go a little too deep and have a lot
Yeah.
of things surface, because I have had that experience before and I
Yeah.
was so confused. I'm like, wait a minute, what did that's the power in it though. Like you said,
Yeah.
thankfully I got a therapist and like,
Yeah.
a support system. But like for me, my experience with doing it because it opened up the other channels,
Mm.
it allowed me to dive deeper with parts of my healing. So I'm grateful for
Yeah.
that, because
Yeah.
sometimes you don't know what's underneath the surface until you start peeling back the onion.
Exactly. 100%.
Yes, I love this whole conversation. This was so informative and I loved everything about it, especially you talking about the difference between like loving your body and just getting to the place of acceptance. And I feel like I needed to hear that. Hopefully someone else that's listening, that helps resonate something with them, because I think a lot of times when you talk about like just your body, like you said, I may think I need to love myself, I need to love, but you have to accept it first before you can get to that point. So I appreciate you for even advocating for that and just continuing to raise the awareness around body acceptance and EFT, because it's definitely powerful.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yes. So before we get out of here, girl, before we get out of here,
Hmm.
please tell everyone about your podcast and your social medias and where they can find all of your stuff at.
Absolutely. So I have a podcast called Wait, There's More. Wait is spelled
Love the name.
Weight. Yeah. And it's definitely about the conversations with other experts that also want to advocate for body acceptance and just have conversations that we don't normally or necessarily get to have with our friendship circles and things like that. So I think that the work that we're doing, yourself, myself included, is super important when it comes to this kind of space. You can find that podcast either on Spotify or on my website, which is www.eftlaine.com. Otherwise, I mean, I definitely post about it on my Instagram, which is at eft.lane, or on Facebook, which is facebook.com/EFT as well.
Yes. So y'all please go tap in with her. Check out her. I love the name of your podcast. I do tap in. So I've started from the back and I'm working my way up. But you had some amazing guests that come through, and I just love everything that your show your platform stands for. So please continue to do the amazing work on yourself first and foremost, and definitely pouring that out to your clients and just anyone that is trying to better themselves. So y'all definitely go tap in with her and get fed and learn some new things, and go book her for some EFT tapping, y'all.
I would love
Because
that. I would
you
love,
don't
I
have to
love
be in
networking.
person. Yes, you don't have
No,
to be in
no.
person.
Absolutely. That's the beauty and the power of the internet these days, right? So much more accessible to do the stuff that you want to do.
Yes, the good parts of it, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
again, Laine, thank you so much for coming on Chronicles of a Virgo podcast.
Thank you for having me. This was fantastic.
No problem. All right, y'all. Did y'all enjoy the conversation between me and Miss Laine? Hope you guys did. And I hope that you guys learned a lot about EFT, body acceptance, body positivity, all of those lovely things. I know that in previous episodes before, I have spoke about my practices with EFT, but I'm so grateful and honored that I found someone that actually is skilled in that area and that teaches it. So, Laine, thank you so much for coming on to the Chronicles of a Virgo podcast and offering all of your insight and your encouragement in your areas of expertise. And please, y'all, Laine's links will be listed in the description box so you guys can go tap in with her podcast, her social media, her website, and see everything that she has going on. And most definitely, if you are someone that is interested in learning about EFT or interested in taking a course or a class or something, please by all means reach out to Laine. Like I said, I have been doing EFT for like the last 2.5, 3 years. For me, it has worked wonders, but there are so many good benefits to it. And to do it with somebody, it can definitely be beneficial. And then when you're on your own, you can still practice those things. So definitely look it up, do your own research. But again, you can also go on Laine's page and her website and reach out to her, if you're interested in taking that journey further. One thing from this conversation that I truly did appreciate is Laine talking about the difference between body acceptance and body positivity. And I think we all may can agree that we struggle with just accepting our bodies, and even outside of just the physical context of accepting our bodies, we may struggle with where we are in life, feeling like we're not as successful as we should be. I'm not a homeowner, I don't have children, I'm not married. Society tells us all these different things that we should do and should be by the age of 30, 40, 50, and so on. And you may be someone that's not in that position. And I realized with myself, even through this conversation, that I have been put in positions where I've tried to jump, take these huge leaps of faith, and not really accept myself for where I am, not accept my body for how I look now, not accepting myself for all of the education that I've done, all the things that I have done in my career. And I have just tried to jump to the next thing, jump to the next thing. And like she said, when you tell yourself all these different things, our mind is not wired like that to process it as the truth, you know? And what I realized with me is me sitting in my feelings, like I always say, and accepting things for what they are at that moment, I am able to draw in different experiences and the things that I actually want. And I've had that happen for me over the last month. So just really sit with this message, internalize it how it resonates for you, but really think about the things that you're trying to accomplish in your life, whether it's with your wellness, your fitness, even if it's just with your success, your career path, even relationships. What do you think is holding you back? Are you not accepting of where you are in that moment and just trying to make these huge leaps of faith? And don't get me wrong, there is nothing wrong with making a leap of faith. Like, I am all for it. Your girl has been out here leaping since 2024 started. Okay. However, I feel like things that make the whole situation come full circle more are accepting where you are. And with acceptance of you, yourself, and your whole entity, and accepting of your current circumstances and situation does not mean that you're going to stay there. And I think that's where we, misconstrued the lines a lot of time as humans, thinking that, oh, if I accept this, this is what it has to be. No, not at all. You're just accepting that moment for what it is in time. Like I said a couple episodes back, accept the moment and then do what you need to do to move forward. Okay. So I don't want to continue to ramble on. I hope this whole entire message resonated with someone. Like I said, please, by all means, go tap in with Laine. She's doing some incredible things on her platform and her podcast. All her links are in the description as well as mine. Follow me on social media, Chronicles of a Virgo Podcast on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I think that's all of them, whatever your platform of choice is. And please tap in and subscribe to our lovely YouTube channel. Outside of the episodes that I post, I do post vlogs here and there, just little things. And I have some awesome stuff, some informal stuff coming up within the next couple months. And those things may not be mentioned on the podcast, but they will definitely be on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe. The link is going to be in the description box. And again, thank you guys for your immaculate support, for continuing to tap in with Chronicles of a Virgo podcast. And thank you to each and every person that has reached out to me within the last 24 hours, I would say. If you know, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. And as of yesterday, March 25th, we had a tragic accident that happened where a cargo ship actually collided with one of our main bridges here and it collapsed. And it was people on the bridge driving, people were on the bridge working, and there had been a rescue mission. At the time of me recording this part, the rescue mission is still continuing to go on, and they are continuing to try to find, these people. So thank you to everyone that reached out to me to see if myself and my family were safe and okay, in which we were. That particular area that this happened in is on the outskirts of where I actually grew up at, and my entire family grew up at. So I used to could see this actual bridge from my grandmom's house. So had a little emotional impact, but nonetheless, we are fine. We are just going to continue to send up prayers to all of those families, the rescue crews, and everyone that was involved in this tragic moment. But again, thank you guys for tapping in with me. All the links are listed below. And remember, guys, please, please, please continue to take care of yourselves and definitely, most importantly, take care of each other. Peace out.